This LOS is calculated and explain gross domestic product, GDP, using expenditure and income approaches. Before we jump into this LOS, we'll just do a bit of an introduction for the reading. In the field of economics, microeconomics is the study of the economic activity and behavior of individual economic units, such as a household, a company, or a market for a particular good or service. And macroeconomics is the study of the aggregate activities of households, companies, and markets. Macroeconomics focuses on national aggregates, such as total investment and the amount spent by all businesses on plant and equipment, total consumption, the amount spent by all households on goods and services, the rate of change in the general level of prices, which is inflation or deflation, and the overall level of interest rates. Macroeconomic analysis examines a nation's aggregate output and income, its competitive and comparative advantages, the productivity of its labor force, and its price level and inflation rate, and the actions of its national government and central bank. The objective of macroeconomic analysis is to address such fundamental questions as what is an economy's aggregate output and how is aggregate income measured? What factors determine the level of aggregate output income for an economy? What are the levels of aggregate demand and aggregate supply of goods and services within the country? Is the level of output increasing or decreasing, and at what rate? Is the general price level stable, rising or falling? Is unemployment rising or falling? Are households spending or saving more? Are workers able to produce more output from a given level of inputs, productivity? Are businesses investing in and expanding their productive capacity? Are exports or imports rising or falling? From an investment perspective, investors must be able to evaluate a country's current economic climate and to forecast its future economic environment in order to identify asset classes and securities that will benefit from economic trends occurring within that country. Macroeconomic variables, such as the level of inflation, unemployment, consumption, government spending, and investment, affect the overall level of activity within a country. They also have different impacts on the growth and profitability of industries within a country. The companies within those industries and the returns of the securities issued by those companies. Aggregate output and income. The aggregate output of an economy is the value of all goods and services produced in a period of time. For example, 1 year or 1 quarter. The aggregate income of an economy is the value of all the payments earned by the suppliers of factors used in the production of goods and services in a period of time. Forms of payment include the following: 1. Compensation to employees. 2. Rent, payment for the use of property. 3. Interest, payment for the use of funds. And finally, 4. Profit, return for the use of capital and the assumption of risk. The aggregate expenditure is the total amount spent on goods and services in an economy. Gross domestic product, GDP, is the market value of all final goods and services produced within the economy in a period of time. There's 2 approaches here for measuring. One is the expenditures approach, the amount spent for all goods and services, and the other is the income approach, which is the aggregate income earned by all households, companies, and the government within the economy. Some key elements of GDP: 1, it represents all goods and services produced during the period. 2, it excludes transfer payments from the government, for example, welfare. It excludes capital gains. Is determined by being sold in a market. Includes only final goods, not intermediate, not work in process. For example, i.e. items to be resold. Measurement alternatives: receipts from the final customer or value added at each stage of production to the customer. We'll do a practice question to check our understanding. Which of the following statements is the most appropriate description of gross domestic product, GDP? A, the total income earned by all households, firms, and government whose value can be verified. B, the total amount spent on all final goods and services produced within the economy over a given period of time. Or C, the total market value of resaleable and final goods and services produced within the economy over a given period of time. Okay, the correct answer is C. Gross domestic product, GDP, is the market value of all final goods and services produced within the economy in a period of time. Now look at, you can see C is almost the exact same wording. Sometimes with the CFA curriculum, in terms of some of the solutions, they change it just a little bit. So you can see they put the total market value of resaleable and final goods and services. Well, the definition that we saw at the first slide and that I copied here in green doesn't have that word resaleable. Nevertheless, C is the most appropriate description of gross domestic product. So you need to memorize these definitions, but also be on the lookout that the wording can be slightly different, but still it's the most appropriate sentence, the most appropriate description. Another quick practice question to check our understanding. The component least likely to be included in a measurement of gross domestic product, GDP, is A, the value of owner-occupied rent, B, the annual salary of a local police officer, or C, environmental damage caused by production. The correct answer is C. Byproducts of production processes that have no explicit market value are not included in GDP. So the key to that one is it was looking for the least likely, so it was looking for the false. So environmental damage caused by production is not included in gross domestic product. Another quick practice question. Which of the following conditions is least likely to increase a country's GDP? A, an increase in net exports, B, increased investment in capital goods, or C, increased government transfer payments. So again, we're looking for the least likely. So C is correct. Government transfer payments, such as unemployment compensation or welfare benefits, are excluded from GDP. So you can see I just cut exactly from what the previous slide. The key elements of GDP, a quick review, represents all goods and services produced during the period. It excludes transfer payments from the government, for example, welfare. Excludes capital gains determined by being sold in the market, and includes only final goods, not intermediate items, for example, items to be resold. And one last quick practice question to finish this LOS. Which of the following would be included in Canadian GDP for a given year? The market value of A, wine grown in Canada by U.S. citizens, B, electronics made in Japan and sold in Canada, or C, movies produced outside of Canada by Canadian filmmakers. A is correct. Canadian GDP is the total market value of all final goods and services produced in a given time period within Canada. The wine was produced in Canada and counts towards Canadian GDP, even though that it is grown by U.S. citizens. And that's the last slide for this LOS. Thank you.